Hello and welcome to BuzzLine, the show all about Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket athletics, alongside Jonathan Leifheit, publisher of GoJackets.com. I'm John Rawl. We want to thank you as we broadcast from Buffalo's Cafe, and this is right here in Cumming, Georgia. And we're going to talk the loss to Miami and the upcoming game against Wake Forest. Jonathan was in Miami for the game against the Hurricanes, one that I can't really come up with the best word to describe it, so have at it.
Unlucky.
Yeah, that's a good one. And how would you describe that Tennessee game?
Frustrating.
Okay. So unlucky versus frustrating. The two losses that Tech had, which I would say the Tennessee game had shades of unluckiness as well, but that was a tough one. But this Miami game was one obviously Georgia Tech had in its grasp, and somehow Mother Nature worked against Georgia Tech, you could say. And
so did Lady Luck.
And so did Lady Luck. My goodness, I don't know how much more luck Miami needed to pull that one out there on that fourth down play. But there were other things that happened in the game that could have made the score more positive for Georgia Tech that we'll go over on this week's show. So we'll look back at Miami and ahead to what's going on with Wake Forest as they head south to face off with the Jackets this weekend. This is BuzzLine. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
My internet has gone completely out.
All right, are you on Buffalo's 5?
No, I'm on Buff Guest.
Buff Guest.
I think what I'm going to do is switch over to my.
Okay. I'm going off my cellular deal on my phone just to see what that looks like.
Yeah, hang on a second here. Starting to wonder if it's not my computer. I think it is my computer. All right, I'm going to have to restart.
Okay. Can I start the show?
Yeah, we can.
I won't ask you anything too scientific.
Yeah.
And we're back on BuzzLine, broadcasting from Buffalo's Cafe, Cumming, Georgia. Come on out and see us sometime. We're at 1175 Buford Highway. That's just off of Georgia Highway 400, exit 14. Just head on toward Buford as you get off exit 14, and we're right down the road. A great environment, plenty of televisions, incredible food. I just had a wonderful Philly cheesesteak before the show, and
that sounds good.
It is good. Makes me feel like I'm from Philly.
John, you never feel like you're from Philly.
Okay, Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Oh, okay, I'll buy that one.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a Philadelphia, Georgia, but I know there's one in Mississippi. So
no, not that I'm aware of.
But did you know there is a Boston, Georgia?
I have heard of that, actually.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of any other New York. Maybe there's a Manhattan, Georgia. I'm not sure. There's a Manhattan, Kansas. I do know that. Alongside Jonathan Leifheit of GoJackets.com, I'm John Rawl. We're talking Georgia Tech's 1-point heartbreak loss to Miami this past weekend. The Jackets lose on a last-second kick from Miami's field goal kicker in the rain, and it was a game, as Jonathan described in our show open, unlucky, unfortunate, however you want to describe it, but just a complete head-scratcher how the Jackets lost this one.
Yeah, I mean, well, not a head-scratcher how they lost it, but I guess I should say it's not a head-scratcher that they lost, but yes, how they lost it was just horrible. I mean, the Jackets kind of plowed out to a nice lead in the first half, got led a late score at the end of the first half, and then opened up the game with opened up the second half with a really nice play by Lamont Simmons for the touchdown off the hilariously bad onside kick by Miami. And then Miami just chipped away, and then Kervonte Benson goes down. Brant Mitchell goes down, 2 key contributors in kind of getting that lead. And, the offense kind of sputtered. And then we had the deluge that even caused them to sputter more. They couldn't get good footing on the outside, so they tried to keep it inside. And it all comes down to a 4th and 10. And Lamont Simmons makes a perfect play on the ball. And let's just face it, it was perfect coverage. There is nothing more Lamont could have done. He had A.J. Gray right there as well. The ball bounces off of Lamont. I think it bounces off of maybe another Tech player, hits the Miami player in the helmet, bounces straight up in the air. He's able to catch it, sets up the game-winning field goal. And
on a 4th down play, 4th and 10, I think it was, he caught that ball on his back.
Yeah, he was landing on his back as he caught that ball. It's one of those cases where it was certainly a fortuitous bounce, you could say, for Miami. The guy, to his credit, was heads up enough to catch the ball when it landed right there in his lap. But, there was nothing spectacular. There was nothing that he did to cause that play to happen. It was pure luck, and that's what I say, that this was an unlucky bounce. That one play was kind of the defining moment for the day for the Jackets.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. Sometimes luck doesn't bounce your way, and that's what happened to Georgia Tech. And it bounced Miami's way. This is a team that's currently ranked in the top 10. They're undefeated. They've got a real chance to possibly play for a national championship. Maybe those lucky bounces are what they're going to have to use to get to that spot.
Well, I've been watching, college football, and I've seen plenty of times where, a team that gets it's not often that you don't see a team that's undefeated or highly ranked that they don't have a lucky bounce go their way.
Clemson last year against NC State, no reason at all NC State shouldn't have been able to kick a field goal and win that game.
Right. There was a number of years back, I think in '97, where Nebraska was losing late to a team, and the ball goes into the end zone and ends up the Nebraska player is able to he basically is falling over, it kicks off his foot, and one of his teammates catches it in the end zone to win the game.
Go back to 1990. Georgia Tech, undisputed national champion, had Colorado not been called for 5 downs, or they weren't called for 5 downs at Missouri.
That's just unlucky. Rocket Ismail in his clip. So luck plays a part, and you have to be there to take advantage of it when it goes your way. Unfortunately, the Jackets, 2 games, 2-point losses, 2 1-point losses, 2 points from being undefeated, or actually 4 points from being undefeated because you actually have to score more than them. But basically, 2 1-point losses. This team is this close to being undefeated, and yet, nope, we're not. 3-2.
And those 2 losses by now a combined total of 1 plus
that's
Tennessee.
What I said, 2 points.
They lost the Tennessee game by 1. But yeah, that's right, because they went for 2.
Yeah.
So 2 losses, 2 points. It can't get any closer than that.
Yeah.
To have 2 losses.
This is a good team that Georgia Tech has. I don't want to sugarcoat the bad things they did. There's certainly that, but this is a good team, and yet they've had everything go against them in the 2 games that were kind of 50-50 games, and normally you get the ball bounce your way at least once.
Yeah, 25-24, the Canes escape. What are you reading from your members on your board? What are they having to say about the way this game went and the season thus far?
Well, I think a lot of people, are feeling the same way. We're that close. There's a few others that are a little pissed at Ted Roof, and we can get to some of that because let's look at what happened. The 2-minute offense for 2-minute defense, I should say, for this team has been atrocious. They have Miami in this case scored 10 points on the final 2 possessions of each half. So they got 7 points on their final possession in the first half, and then they drove down and kicked the field goal for 3 points, which is all they needed. Mm-hmm. And probably had they wanted to or needed to, they probably could have gotten the touchdown. North Carolina did it, I think, to close out the first half. Pitt did the same thing to close out their first half. I don't remember what Jack State did, but I do remember Tennessee. Both halves, they had basically a scoring drive to kind of keep them back in the game. So outside of the 2-minute defense, they've been good, but the problem is you can't play outside of that. So people are mad about Roof's defense and their inability to close out a half or a game against the team and keep them off the scoreboard, when the time's running low.
Well, our Buffalo's Cafe insider, he and I had a briefing, and I'm not talking about Jonathan. It was someone else close to Buffalo's Cafe here in Cumming, was asking me to ask you, how many times did Tech blitz during that final drive?
I haven't had a chance to relook at it, but I can tell you that I know of at least once that they did. That was early on, and I think there was another time.
Okay.
So they did blitz. It was not something they did regularly, but I do believe it happened. As I mentioned, I was there in the press box, and I will tell you the press box is not the greatest vantage point in Miami. We were in the end zone where home plate used to be for that stadium, opposite where Miami was driving. So we really only could see about the last 40 yards of the drive, and by that point, the big play that put him in field goal range was the 4th and 10, and at that point you could see things. So it's tough to tell, but I thought they sent a linebacker or two on a couple of occasions. Now, if you want to talk about that, one thing I don't think they did well was disguise when they were going to blitz. Too often I saw a linebacker jumping up on the line in advance of the snap. You do that, you're tipping your hand. Gives them a chance to make an adjustment. They needed to hold that back and disguise that a little better. But I do believe they did blitz some.
Okay, well, this fan told me that he didn't think they blitzed hardly at all. It was pretty much a prevent defense out there to try to stop Miami, and that ended up not working.
It probably appeared to be more of a prevent than it did anything else. But, at that point, with the conditions, they had those bubble screens that they can't run, and that was the big thing. I mean, it's really tough to say that it was no blitzing and a prevent defense because they ran 4 or 5 bubble screens in a row. Mm-hmm. And what they didn't do was they should have rolled a linebacker out or squeezed the cornerback up a little bit more in order to cut those off. From what Mark Rick said in his post game, it was a run-pass option play, and if we played it lined up one way, then they would have run the ball. If they lined up the other, they'd do the bubble screen. We kept lining up the same way, kept playing the bubble screen, so that's what they were doing. So what they needed to do is roll a linebacker over there, or at least fake like they're going to do that in order to force the play, or don't look like you're going to do it and do it at the last second after the play's already been called. Something like that in order to change things up. But at that point, on those plays, a blitz would have done no good because basically he's dropping back and throwing it immediately. So didn't matter.
Well, this show matters, and we're glad that you've tuned us in, whether you're listening to us on one of our great affiliates or you're watching us on Facebook Live, courtesy of GoJackets.com. We're going to take a pause for the calls, rather, and come right back. And the topic, Jonathan, to hold people over through the break, timeouts. I've got some questions. Get your opinion about the timeout usage from Paul Johnson when we come back on BuzzLine from CRM Sports. Mr. T, are you listening? Oh, really? Okay. What kind of audio do we have, Paul Johnson? Have you put that on Libsyn yet?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get it from there. I don't need your little flash drive thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back on the.
Are you?
Wi-Fi is working again. The issue is my computer. Every now and then, they have this stupid virtual office thing that we have to do for work that puts you in the office, and every now and then that software it blows my computer's mind, and it goes, I can't get to the internet that way, and it tries to do all kinds of crazy things. Right, well, you put that on there and it do the same thing. It's the software. So I don't want to hear that out of the guy that had to reboot the other week himself.
What are you talking about? And we're back at Buffalo's Cafe coming. This is BuzzLine, and we want to remind you, Bash Night happens here at Buffalo's Cafe. All-you-can-eat wings every Monday and Wednesday. $14.99 is the price for that. All-you-can-eat wings Monday and Wednesday at Buffalo's Cafe, Cumming, Georgia. Come on out. Tell them you heard it on BuzzLine, you saw it on BuzzLine, and we will appreciate you sharing that with everybody. And when you tell them that, also say, to hell with Georgia.
There you go.
All right, right now it's to hell with Miami. As we go back and look at this 1-point loss to Mark Richt, former Georgia Bulldogs head coach, a guy that came up to Atlanta last year with the Canes and escaped with a win. He goes back to South Florida, to Miami Gardens to be more specific, and his first time hosting Georgia Tech as the Miami coach escapes with a win. You know, when he was at Georgia, oftentimes the Jackets went to his place of business in Athens and left with a victory. Well, that should have happened this past week. But
well, he actually twice they went up there to his place and came away with a victory. Yeah,
more happened more there than in Atlanta at Bobby Dodd Stadium.
Yeah, don't start.
I don't think he ever beat. I don't think the Jackets ever beat Mark Richt in Atlanta, did they?
No, they have not yet.
Okay, that's true. Good point. So the Jackets did lose to Miami, and as we're going back through looking at this game, the cliffhanger going through the break, timeouts. If you'll remember toward the last drive Miami had as they were moving down the field, Paul Johnson and the Jackets still had some timeouts. And my question to you, Jonathan, is do you approve of the way he chose to not call the timeouts to save time?
Well, I don't know that he was trying to save time. I think he was trying to burn time off. So, Miami burned at least 2 timeouts during the course of that. I think actually burned a third one. So it's not like they didn't have a chance to regroup. So I'm assuming the issue is if we didn't use the timeouts, we didn't get a chance to reset the defense and kind of get them back doing what they need to do. And that's really what revolves around the question. So from that perspective, probably earlier in the drive they could have done that, but how much difference would it have made? I don't know that you can make that many adjustments. The guys were lining up like they were supposed to. It would have given more of the coaches a chance to do something than it would have been to do anything with the players. And so it might have helped. It probably wouldn't have hurt. Certainly, I'm not sure if it would have changed the outcome or not. Given how things went.
Well, looking back, you wish Georgia Tech would have had a little bit more time to at least be giving a chance to go down the field. Now, let's say they even had a minute or more than a minute left in the game to try to get another score. Remember, this is a team where the kicking game has been suspect. Has that been improved at all?
Well, no, actually, for the course of this game, it got worse because Sean Davis, the place kicker, was hurt on one of the kickoffs, and so the field goal that they kicked, I believe it was in the fourth quarter, late in the third, early in the fourth, was actually Brenton King. So the backup was in there. So the field goal game has gotten a little better, but it certainly has not gotten to the point where you'd like it to be. So they would have had a serious uphill battle. And on top of that, the field looked atrocious on TV. Let me tell you, it was even much worse than that.
And again, Jonathan was there in person.
Yeah, that field was. I mean, you didn't really see it on TV, but I mean, those guys, you could probably see some of it. But when they were walking, water was squishing, and so it would have been a very tough to do any kind of a long field goal to begin with. So it would have required them probably to get into the same range that like Miami did for their field goal, and even the Miami kicker, he hit that low and. Probably lucky he didn't get that blocked, because it was not an easy kick. And to his credit, he nailed it, but it was a low kick, and that's what you're going to get kind of out of conditions like that.
After the game, was that field destroyed? Is it going to have to be repaired and replaced before the Dolphins have another game there?
I'm not sure what they'll do. It'll probably be able to recover. I mean, they designed them to be able to do that, but yeah, it was significantly torn up. There was a lot of divots, a lot of holes. A lot of sod coming up. It did not drain well, in my opinion. It was very, very, very squishy. And matter of fact, before the game, Mark Richt was talking to Coach Johnson and indicated, "I'm sorry about the field. It's already, it was already wet before the game."
Really?
Yeah.
Because of rain, or did
they?
Yeah,
it's South Florida. This is their rainy season. They get rain constantly, so stuff passes through there, and it wasn't draining well. So it was a wet track to begin with, and then that deluge that came in the second half was just, it was tropical storm-like, and how much rain it dumped out there.
So the question is, how much did that affect the game? How much did that affect the score?
It was huge.
Okay.
Because, I asked Coach Johnson this after the game. Did it change your game plan? He indicated at that point no, but then I think on reflection, you go and listen to his press conference from today. He talks more about that and how it did affect of what they did, because Georgia Tech was really doing well on the outside against Miami. If you look the first drive, they kept it inside, and I think they went lost for like a minus. They were held in minus yardage. On the second drive, they started doing rocket tosses. Clinton Lynch rips off a 48-yarder, and off they go. And they scored on the next two drives by going outside. After the half, the inside continued to be a problem. But then they lost because they couldn't keep their footing. Coach Johnson changes his approach and basically tries to keep it inside, and they don't make any hay at all there. So the weather definitely impacted the game. They should have been able to do a lot more outside running than they did, and the footing and the turf kind of resulted in them taking a different game plan in the second half. I still think they should have tried outside, but guys were falling all over the place.
And you talk about the rushing game for Tech in this game. The leading rusher was Clinton Lynch, and he only netted 71 yards in this game. That's a little strange to see.
Yeah, you look at Taquan Marshall and Cravante Benson have both been averaging, I think, in the 120 and 130 yard range respectively, and to see those guys, held way down low. And normally, this was a game I thought the A-backs could make some hay, because Miami usually tries to play the inside, and they did. But then weather shuts it down. So from that perspective, I'm not surprised that kind of goes. And if you look at your top two rushers, what are they? A-backs.
Yeah. Now, which of the backs had ice on their leg or something like that?
That would have probably been Cravante Benson.
Okay. And we've got Mike making his appearance here in a moment, so we'll get him. Mike, if you'll go put your makeup on, and we'll get you on here in just a second. But anyway, what do we know about that injury?
We don't know. I can tell you that Coach Johnson slipped up a little bit in the post-game press conference, and then it said something about a pulled, and then he goes, a lower body injury, because they're not really allowed to say much more than generalities due to the HIPAA laws, the privacy laws. So he pulled something. I don't know what it was, but it was probably like a hamstring or a quad. Might have even been a calf, but one of those. They
may not be allowed to say much for HIPAA laws, but Johnson just normally doesn't like to talk at all about that kind of stuff.
Well, no, and we've talked about this in previous shows. Johnson and Ken Segura with the AJC kind of have this ongoing little battle that goes on with injuries and who's in and who's out. And I think you'll see even again. Wait till Thursday. That's always the mantra. That's when the injury report comes out.
And not only Benson, but there was at least another one of the backs who kind of disappeared late in the ball game.
Clinton Lynch went out for a bit with an injury, and then he came back as well. But he did come back to return. So
okay, well,
we did lose the linebacker Brant Mitchell. That was a big loss. Bruce Jordan Swilling came in and did an okay job, but he kept getting out of position, so they actually pulled him and put in Trey Alexander. Is that right, Trey Alexander, in his place, number 25. So that was kind of a replacement that was done on the fly.
Okay. We're going to call timeout on BuzzLine. When we come back, our super fan, Georgia Tech super fan, Mike Hickman is going to join us, and I'm going to let you two just go after each other. And
all right.
I'm going to sit over here on the side and enjoy it as long as you view the audience. So that is coming right up on BuzzLine from CRM Sports. Stay with us.
It's in the mail. It's in the mail.
What am I supposed to talk about? Georgia Bulldogs National Championship. You mean how they wouldn't have won the last year? No, the one they've already won for this year. Yeah, that's a mythical.
Yeah, it's the epitome of mythical.
Let him sit in the middle.
I'm going to keep the same one. Oh, yeah, we are. We're going to surround you. Whatever you want to talk about.
Mike, you like to talk.
I'm in the real estate. I'm thinking about land.
Okay.
Who we play last week?
Last week,
Yeah, who we play?
Miami.
Miami. Okay. Well, you can't spell thug without a U.
Yep.
Did have a conversation with a Miami fan this morning. He thought when I said that Rick's onside kick was desperate, he said that was the wrong word. That was desperate. He was searching for another possession. He didn't like that.
Is this your buddy that you know? Yeah.
He went to South Florida, but he's from Miami. He's a big Miami fan.
Okay.
His son went to Auburn,
All right,
Georgia.
Mike, if we all could scoot over about 2 inches. That's good. Thank you.
How's that?
That's great. All right, we're getting ready to start back here with Mike Hickman joining us now. And we're back at BuzzLine talking Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket Athletics alongside Jonathan Leifheit, the publisher and czar of GoJackets.com, the leading online forum for Georgia Tech fans. And one of his longtime subscribers and fans is Mike Hickman, and he's joined us here on this week's BuzzLine. I'm John Rawl. Mike, thank you, and welcome back to BuzzLine.
You're welcome.
You've been very helpful here at Buffalo's Cafe and coming throughout the course of our run here this fall. And unfortunately, we got you here after a loss, but maybe you're going to be the good luck for this coming weekend.
It happens.
It happens. I'm going to sit back, and I know you don't have a script in front of you, Mike, but just is there anything you want to ask Jonathan about this game this past weekend?
Well, yeah, I want to know why you made us lose.
I didn't make us lose. I didn't make us lose at all. So let me take a question that you did ask me, and
Okay.
that was the other day. And then this is also a question that's shown up, and that's around freshman running back Jerry Howard. Why didn't we see him?
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you ask that question?
Yeah.
Well, why did we say Jerry Howard? Oh, well,
why do you think we should have?
Well, because I think Jerry is more of a pop than Quaid is, hitting the hole. That's the first thing. My assumption is that he fumbled in practice. If you fumble in practice, you don't get to play. That's my assumption. I could be totally wrong. It could be just an oversight. I've coached before where I realized, we didn't get a kid in because I was so into thinking about coaching. That may have happened. I don't know.
Yeah, so we asked Coach Johnson that same question after the game, and I think we'll hear him kind of I think in that case that was one of those after the game, I think it might have been heat of the moment type of thing, and there might also have been a bit of the fumbleitis. The conditions were horrible, particularly in the second half when Cervante went down. He might have been thinking through that, and I will say that Jerry and Cervante are kind of one type of back, and Quaid is a lot different. If you kind of go back to 2014 and look at Zach Lasky and St. John days, St. John and would run between the tackles a lot more, and Lasky was a little more of the outside pop, and I think that's probably true with Quaid as well. I don't think he's as fast as Lasky. But
so my thought on that was when I saw Quaid go into the game, my next thought was let's pull Taquan, let's put Matthew in, and let them run midline and see, because you don't have to cut as hard in the midline, and let's see if we can do it. But, of course,
Well,
I'm not calling. I will always defer to Coach Johnson because he knows what he's doing 1,004% more than I do.
Well, Mike, we can arrange this headset of yours to magically be connected to the coaching staff during a game if you'd like.
Actually, I can do that.
Okay.
I can make that happen, as a matter of fact.
Right. My only response to that would be that I've seen I've seen Taquan run the midline as well, so I know that's there.
Yeah.
For him, he's run the quarterback, as our buddy Bob Davey likes to call it, the quarterback duck play. I know how much you love that.
I love Bob Davey.
Yeah, he's great. So both of those were there, but I think, to me, if we put him in, that would have even more strongly telegraphed what we were doing to Miami.
That might be.
Because thus far, Jordan has been kind of a one-trick pony. He's been very good at the midline.
Right.
And not much else. That's
true. Yeah.
So, all right. So let's go back to Jerry Howard.
So you're saying the other team actually watched tape on us and planned for us for the whole week?
You would actually think that might have
interesting.
happened. Yes. There you go. All right. So what's your next question?
My next question, can we talk about Wake yet?
As long as you don't violate FCC standards, you can ask anything you want.
I don't know the FCC standards, so I can claim ignorance. Yeah.
Well,
plus I have the meanest attorney in the state of Georgia, so I'm not worried about anything I say.
Isn't your usual method just to claim ignorance?
Yeah, it works all the time.
Yeah.
Except at Tech. They kept sending me these probation and warning letters for some reason.
Sure.
They didn't accept it there.
Well, let me ask you, Mike, since you're a super fan, Georgia Tech, and just like most Tech fans, they oftentimes are surrounded by enemy fans. What has been the response during this week thus far from the non-Georgia Tech fans about these close losses, this last loss? I mean, are they rubbing it in, or do they have respect?
Not at all. That's what's interesting is that the other fans seem to really have respect for Tech. Now, some of them, I had one, actually my painter, who's a big Georgia fan, but he didn't go there. So, there you go.
There's a shock.
But it's interesting because he said, I just don't understand why you guys play so dirty with those chop blocks. And I said, well, we don't chop block. We accidentally chop block sometimes, and we get called for it, but we cut block just like everybody does in NFL from Pee Wee to, all levels. So, I haven't really had any ribbing for it. The Miami fan I talked to this morning said, hey, we were lucky. And I said, well, I think you were, but I also think Miami didn't lay down when they could have.
To the point I made earlier, John asked me one word to describe that game. I said unlucky. I mean, you have to be good enough to take advantage of being lucky, so when the ball does go your way, you can take advantage of it. I mean, if that happens with Georgia Tech up, 38-24, and they catch a 4th and 10, does it really matter?
Yeah,
not really.
Not really.
So you have to be good enough to take advantage.
So what
of
about the non-field goal? What did you think about that?
Which one you're talking about? When we didn't go for it?
We didn't go for it.
Where we didn't kick the field goal.
Yeah.
So again, let's look at what Coach Johnson said. He was told by his field goal coach, the kicker coach, that they didn't feel that the field goal kicker could make it.
44 yards, right?
44 yards. So,
well, hey, if your coach, that's why you have coaches. If they tell you that it won't work, then you need to do what you need to go with what your coaches say.
I will tell you that I don't know that I believe that, and I'll tell you why. Because
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why. I sat in the press box at 2:30 to 3:30 and watched the kickers warm up, and I watched Sean Davis go out there. And keep in mind, Sean Davis did not get injured until after that play happened.
Okay.
And I watched him kick 47 and 52-yard field goals from that turf, and at that point it hadn't rained either. So now I will note that when he kicked those, they were rather low, so it was a risk, but certainly he was showing that he had the leg for it. So it was kind of borderline, but he kicked a 47-yarder that would have been good easily from another 5-10 yards. The 52-yarder was good, from probably 55. But kick it low, run the risk of a block. So
a block and a return.
And a return. Then it might not have been that close.
Yeah, interesting.
So anyway.
I'm impressed you have your own painter. Are they doing a nude portrait of you, or what are they doing?
Oh, God.
Think Burt Reynolds back in the 80s.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm just glad to know.
You go that far back.
Well, I was going to have dinner tonight, but so much for that.
I mean, have you ever known anybody who said they had their own painter?
I mean, you know.
He's a real estate guy.
That kind of painting. I thought you meant like, another Rembrandt or something like that.
No. The only painting he does is paint by numbers or, that type of thing. So
I got you.
I can only go up to 11, though, because I only have 10 fingers. So once you get past that, I don't know how to do it.
Well, at least yours goes to 11. There you go. There's your Spinal Tap reference for the day.
There you go.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're glad that Mike is on with us, and we're going to talk Wake Forest as that's the next opponent for Georgia Tech as the Jackets need to turn the page and focus on what's left. I mean, Mike, I know as a super fan like you are, to know that you've lost 2 games this year by a total of 2 points has to be just head-scratching.
It's, yes, it is in some ways, but I've been around so long that I guess that and I've coached that when I coached, my fandom changed a whole lot because you get to see all the things that happen behind the scenes, and you get a kid who looks at you one week and he can eat nails, and the next week you look at him and I'm not sure.
He's chasing butterflies down the field.
Yeah, you can just see the difference sometimes in what's going on, and the team can have that. You see some of the movies where you say, "Hey, let's talk about so and so's girlfriend breaking up with him, so we can get on to the game." We get
What do we know about Coach Johnson in a locker room after a game, win or loss? Does he get real emotional?
I would not say emotional, but he's I think he does a great job, and this is something that you kind of look at leaders. Leaders know how to read their team, and sometimes the thing to do is to go in there and light them up, but sometimes the thing to do in there is to go in there and support them. And I think for the most part he does a great job of that. I always laugh when I see people say, well, if that were me, I'd have them out running gassers all night long. And sometimes what you got to do is go out there and support your guys and get their confidence back, because if they don't, all you're doing is running them into the ground. They're going to quit. Yeah. So I think he does a fantastic job of reading his team and finding the right buttons to push. By and large, there's sometimes it doesn't matter what button you push, it's not going to work. But I think he does a good job.
All right, we'll take a timeout on the show. When we come back, we'll turn our attention to Wake Forest, and we'll also try to sneak in some feedback from both Mike and Jonathan on what in the world's going on in the ACC. Is Virginia going to be a much bigger and more challenging game for the Jackets in a few weeks? We'll have all that right after this.
So I was just listening to the ESPN. I don't know which one it is. Maybe it's not even. It could have been Fox. I don't know. But they were talking about Miami. Do they believe that they're back? And the consensus was, yeah, we're not so sure. But what was interesting though is they felt like NC State has a better chance of taking the conference than Clemson does at this point.
Well, the winner, I think it's the winner of NC State.
Clemson.
NC State Clemson will be against the winner of Miami and Virginia Tech.
I would put money down on that deal.
Yep. So
I know one thing: we could win every game we have left, and we could also lose every single one of them.
Hey, good point. Welcome back to BuzzLine from Buffalo's Cafe, Cumming, Georgia. Buffalo's a great place to come to anytime, and Mike Hickman here with us, Cumming resident. This is a good place to come anytime, right?
Absolutely.
Go ahead and brag on what you do to everybody in case they're out looking for a piece of property, a home, things like that. You're the man to call.
Well, I'm a former civil and environmental engineer. That's my previous background. Got into development with a property called the Georgia Tech Club right here on my hat that ended up changing names into a property called Echelon, and that launched me into ownership and Keller Williams, working with Keller Williams, and we have grown to, I don't even know now, it's 180 agents. Where I walk down the halls and don't know people at my own office because we have so many people, but I'm one of the top agents here and have coached some of the top agents here, and they've coached me, and we've just got a great franchise and a great group of people to work with. And so I have a blast. I get to help people, realize their dream of buying their first house. And or like today, I was helping some people look at property, looking at building a house. And so we're walking the land, and I'm trying to explain to them what to look for, what to pay attention to as far as that goes. So each client is a different little project, and it's sort of fun to be able to do, work with all of those. And most of my clients are people that I've known for quite a while, and they're friends, and some of them are even family. And so that gives you the extra little incentive to want to do a great job for them. And I really enjoy it. It's you would think after the engineering career that, but you know what, I've designed a lot of stuff, and I can design bridges in my sleep, and I can design.
I have that same problem.
I can design walls in my sleep, and I've cleaned up 300 gas stations, and I can do that in my sleep, and it frankly got boring.
Okay.
And,
Mike,
so
if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to redo that is to hit me on my email at Hickman, Hickman, at KW, as in KellerWilliams.com.
Right.
Or you can go to FOCO, which if you're Forsyth County people, we call ourselves FOCO. It's just quicker. But I go to FOCOhome.com. That's my website, and you can search for homes there. And it's a neat spot to be able to check out things.
All right. Mike Hickman here with us, and Jonathan Leifheit's with us as well. Jonathan with GoJackets.com, and Mike's been a long-time subscriber and a fan of that website, where if you haven't checked out GoJackets.com lately, please do so. There's so much dialogue going on between the fans of Georgia Tech, and you can learn so much about what the current team's doing and recruiting, which, by the way, we need to get to that in the next segment.
And don't miss the water cooler.
Yes, water cooler is a good.
If you need, I have asked some of the strangest questions on the water cooler, and I've gotten expert. I mean, if you want to know about nuclear, the Fukushima nuclear plant thing, we had people on there that could tell you exactly what was going on. It's a pretty interesting group of people.
All right. Well, I'll keep that in mind next time I'm searching nuclear.
The water, nuclear.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Jonathan, let's talk about Wake. What do we know about this team? They're 3-3 currently.
No, they're actually 4-2.
Okay, 4-2. Sorry.
Yes.
My apologies, Deacon fans.
Yes, they're 4-2, 1-2 in the conference. They've had a pretty good start to the year. They did manage to lose to Florida State in a nail biter. So I'm not sure. I can't remember who the other team was that they lost to, but I think they lost this past weekend as well. But they're a much improved Demon Deacon team. They were typically a cellar dweller, and I think they're going to find their way out of the cellar. So the Wake Forest that we're used to seeing, kind of like Duke, not the same team, not your daddy's Wake Forest anymore. So they'll be a much tougher team. Typically, Dave Clawson has his team very well prepared on defense, always a tough defense. Their offense is usually a work in progress. This year it's a little better, so that's gotten them a few more wins.
The Deacons, the cross-divisional opponent this year that you don't get to play on a regular basis like Clemson.
Yeah, every 6 years we get to see them.
Has it been that long since the Jackets?
Actually, it's been 7 years because I think they did some readjustments on the schedule a few years ago. So the last time Georgia Tech played them was in 2010 in Winston-Salem, where they managed to come away with a 24-20 victory.
You remember that game, Mike?
That was Jim Grove was the coach, right?
He was. And do you remember what happened to cause us to win it?
I do not.
All right, it was a kind of a post pattern, I believe, to Stephen Hill. I'm not sure if it was Stephen Hill or another wide receiver from Joshua Nesbitt, quarterback. And that was with about 30 seconds-ish to go in the game.
Okay. And that would have been early in the Paul Johnson dynasty.
Yes, it would have.
Okay, but a win, no doubt, and that's what Jacket fans want to see in this homecoming contest. What does homecoming mean to you two? Do y'all do anything special, different versus other games?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so my wife works for the Georgia Tech Alumni Association,
okay.
So I'll be going to a speech on Thursday night, which is by one of the astronauts who ran the International Space Station. I can't remember his name right now. We'll be at Steamhouse Lounge on Friday night with a bunch of fraternity brothers for a get-together there.
Eat the lobster bisque.
That's what my son told me today. He said the lobster bisque is the way to go. So I'll be there starting Friday night. It probably will end up Saturday morning when we leave. And then we are going to make the rec parade at 9 a.m. early on Saturday morning because that's always fun to see what the kids have cobbled together, although they were never as good as we were.
Of course not.
Of course not. And then
we're still legends.
Yeah, look in our own mind, right?
Yeah.
So we look at all the floats and whatnot they have for that, and then the decorations around the fraternity houses around campus, and then there are people who come into town that you just don't see, but once a year, maybe once every 4 or 5 years. So it's almost one of those, let's see who shows up type situations. It really is a homecoming. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad we've got a 7 o'clock, 7:30 kick or whatever time it's going to be to be nice and cool off a little bit. And
it's nice not to have a nooner. Oh my God.
Yes.
Now at the RV that you set up before games, it's a good thing not only because it's homecoming but because it's a late kick.
Yeah, I mean we have all day to kind of tailgate and get things ready, and we'll have I was in the Georgia Tech band. We'll have a lot of folks from that group that will stop by and have a good time, and we'll visit with them, get to see folks I hadn't seen in a while, just like Mike's point, and then we'll have the usual crowd that shows up there as well. So we'll have some games going on the satellite TV and all that plugged in and ripping and rolling all day long.
Again, homecoming 2017. Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. What do the Jackets need to do, in your opinion, to stop Wake Forest and come away with a win?
Well, I think the first thing is they got to hang on to the ball, and if they do that, that'll probably go a long way. And the second thing is I think if they can stop Wake Forest from scoring in the last 2 minutes of either half, we'll probably be in good shape.
That seems to be a recurring problem, but
yes,
Wake Forest. I've only seen the only game that I've seen a lot of their play was their very close game that they had with Appalachian State. They won that one at the end.
Yep, by 1 point. I believe it was 20-19.
Yeah. They I can't remember if they made a kick or blocked the kick or something like that, but it was I believe they stopped the kick. The kick either got blocked or went.
Yeah, I think you're right that I think it was near the end of the game that they took care of that. And then I don't know if you watched the Florida State game, but they had Florida State on the ropes. It was a kind of the drive at the end of the game that Florida State had to take that game. That they were tied up, would have gone to overtime.
Yeah.
And then their last game was against Clemson, that they lost that one 28-14. So you can see, I mean, you would think Clemson would be significantly better than them, but I believe that game was tied up till later in the game. Matter of fact, I am correct. It was at one point tied up. No, it wasn't. They were up 21-0. So never mind. So they scored 2 late touchdowns.
Did they not play last weekend?
No, they were off.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
wait, an opponent of Georgia Tech had a bye week before they play us?
Yeah,
that's shocking news.
Tell Paul Johnson about that.
Yeah. We will take a break, our final break on this week's BuzzLine. When we come back, Jonathan, Mike, and yours truly will wrap it up. I'll ask Jonathan if there's anything recruiting going on that we should know about, as signing day 2017 Part 2 is coming up in 2 months.
Yeah,
we're 2 months.
Yeah, December 20th, I believe, is Part 1, and then the first Wednesday in February is Part 2.
Well, I said 2017, the calendar year. This will be the second signing day.
Okay.
We know what we be talking about. All right, we'll come back, wrap it up this week's BuzzLine. Stay with us.
Do they actually sign on the 20th?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're just as committed as you would be in January.
LOI'd.
Wow. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was a soft, whatever or what.
Nope.
Interesting.
All right, final segment as we get ready to start. Nathan, we appreciate your comments on Facebook Live. Yes, we appreciate the fact that we are looking a little better. We're still tweaking our Wi-Fi/cellular signal here at Buffalo's Cafe, and hopefully if you all think that this week's look was better, then we'll go with that from here on out, as long as I can afford AT&T's monthly bill, which I should be, because it shouldn't go up anymore. I have the package where
you have the unlimited plan.
Yeah, but they bump down your speed or something after a certain point. They always get you.
They get you in there. Yeah, tell me about it.
So any Georgia Tech connections with either I need a connection with my phone company, my electric utility company, and
sewer would be a good one.
Okay, yeah.
He's on septic out there. It's not sewer.
Yeah. I just have an outhouse.
Outhouse.
All right.
Probably talk to him. He's the sewer engineer.
I'm the civil engineer.
Huh?
I actually designed Skip Carey's sewer system at his house way, way back. That was a lot of fun.
No beep. Fill in the blank if you want. All right, we'll come back now. Back we are for the final segment of this week's BuzzLine from Buffalo's Cafe coming. And we want to remind you that there are 14 Buffalo's Cafe locations throughout Metro Atlanta. So when you're looking for a great place to go in for a nice meal or just a place to watch the game and have a cold beverage, Buffalo's Cafe is the place to go. And right here in Cumming, we're right off of exit 14 off of Georgia 400. And we would love to see you when you come in. Mike, tell them the good word.
To hell with Georgia.
I like the enunciation. Very, very important there. And if you like cold beverages, here at Buffalo's Cafe, they have 14 drafts on tap, including local craft beers. So that is a great thing. If you like craft beers, this is a good place to have it. And I'll tell you what, if I had one handy, I believe I would turn it up right now because we're going to talk recruiting. And a lot of people like to talk about recruiting, and I like to hear about recruiting. So Mr. Leifheit of GoJackets.com, what can you tell us on that front? Because this year, unlike any year in the past, we've got a signing day coming up in 2 months.
Now this is North Georgia, so you're not pronouncing that right. It's Cruton.
Oh, sorry.
We're in North Georgia. It's Cruton season.
Thanks, Mike.
Not only are we in North Georgia, we're in no foe.
No FOCO.
No, FOCO.
FOCO. FOCO, that's right.
We're in no FOCO.
That's right. Okay.
Technically, we're SoFoco.
We're SoFoco, yeah.
So
Okay.
there you go. All right, so let's talk about the schedule. To John's point, the NCAA changed up things a little bit this year, so we'll have an early signing period for football, although it's arguably not very early, which will go from basically December 20th through the 22nd of 2017. So that'll be first. And then the second date actually will be the typical date, which is the first Wednesday of February, which in this case will be February 7th. And that period runs through 2018. So Georgia Tech right now has 15 commits, probably take, 4 to 5 more. We'll see kind of, I think there's a couple things. One example is Andrew Marshall declared out for the season prior to the Miami game, but he still has a redshirt year left. He would have been graduating, but he might come back next year. So we're kind of waiting to see on that. That may affect the numbers. And then there's always, players who may graduate early, go take jobs, or maybe they're just, going to transfer out. So that happens. So right now, though, I would expect that number to be 20 plus or minus. I think right now the openings indicate 19, but I know there'll be at least one that'll go. So I would say 20 at that point. And then if you want to flip over to the basketball side right now, there are actually 2 different recruits, Michael DeVoe and Christian, and I never can say this, Christian Sajolin from Texas and Florida. Still waiting for one more, maybe 2 more recruits to come in on that. A lot of visits coming up. We got all kinds of, Rod's been all over it with basketball. Got kind of a whole slew of breaking news on that Rod had broken out. I haven't even read his report. He told me he was putting it up today, and I haven't even had a chance to read it because I've been at work.
Including right here at BuzzLine. So
yes,
thank you.
You're putting me to work.
We're going to give you your own parking space next month for your heroic effort.
There you go.
Mike, are you into the recruiting scene a lot?
I used to be, but I got to the point where I just don't have time to pay attention to it. And so what happens is I end up giving a look at the insiders board at GoJackets.com, and that's where I get my information. And my son helps me in the basketball because he played against some of these. Well, he's getting a little older now, so he didn't play against a lot of these kids.
Older,
so he doesn't know these kids as much. Now he's talking about the little brother of the kid he played against.
There you go.
And but he's my son's my basketball guru.
Yeah, he's not as short as Mike, so he actually was able to play some.
But he doesn't have the shot that I have, though.
Thank God for him.
Mike was the original white Muggsy Bogues. So. All right.
Yeah, something like that.
What is the biggest need from a 2018 recruiting standpoint?
I think right now, in terms of what's left in the class, is probably going to be trying to identify an offensive lineman. And I think by and large they've got everything else kind of filled out. They got some kids that will be kind of athletes that can go either A-back, wide receiver, or defensive back. In pretty good shape there. I'd love to see them add another defensive lineman because we never seem to get enough of those. So at this point, though, I think they're pretty good shape. Mostly offensive line is where we need to add more players.
And if I am correct on this, Jonathan and Mike, it seems unlike maybe with Chan Gailey that the Johnson coaching staff in terms of recruiting does a better job, if you want to call it that, focusing on Georgia first and not casting its net everywhere?
Well, that's kind of been – I would say that there's some truth to that. I mean, Gailey got quite a few, but in my opinion, Gailey did a great job of talent identification. I mean, and so has Johnson. Both of them, their performance on the field has exceeded, if you want to look purely at the rankings, both of them exceeded the rankings that kind of come out on that. But yeah, Johnson is certainly probably focused more on Georgia, and Gailey had some other ends. Of course, a lot of that's kind of goes to where do you have connections? Where does your coaching staff have connections?
Yeah.
Gailey obviously was at one point with the Cowboys. He actually got a few players out of there. I think there was a couple running backs and stuff. So Jimmy Dixon comes to mind as one example. Tashard Choice. Well, no, he's from down south of town. So he was local. He went to Oklahoma and then came back.
And he played the Cowboys, right?
He did later play for them.
That's what I was thinking about.
There you go. So, and then you had other coaches that had different areas. So it kind of depends on where you have your connections and where your coaching staff has connections. As an example, Andy McCollum, former head coach at Middle Tennessee State. We annually get a few players out of kind of the Nashville, Murfreesboro, that area. We always pull some out, and he also has connections over in Knoxville. So, players like Nathan Cottrell and Brant Mitchell that came out of those areas, because the coaches have a name and connections, that's where they'll go.
All right, and of course, fans, if you want to know what's going on with recruiting, there's only one place to go, and that's GoJackets.com, and Jonathan and his staff have it all covered for you. And if you're just not quite there, you're on the fence about being a subscriber, they even have a special deal where you get 7 days.
7 days free, and then we start. Then you get to pay.
Then you get to pay, but still 7 days free with a chance to learn about all that's going on in recruiting and all the team coverage. GoJackets.com, part of the CBS Sports Interactive family. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
All right, CBS
Sports Interactive.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. That's harder to remember than Keller Williams, I have to admit.
or Scout, for that matter.
Or Scout.
Yeah.
Mike, I asked Jonathan in the previous segment, what do you think Georgia Tech needs to do this weekend to get the homecoming win against the Demon Deacons?
Well, I think, first of all, and every coach is going to say this, take care of the ball, which they did against Miami. And I think they've got to take the ball away a little bit. I'm a little worried about some of the injuries we seem to have. I'd like to see Cervante back out there. I think it's important to have him there. But I think to win the game, we have to come out with some energy and some fire. And I used to tell my kids when we went out there, I said, the fact that the other team even dared to show up today should just make you mad. You should just be incensed that they actually believe they can beat us. And for no other reason than that, let's go stomp them into the ground because they showed up.
You're such an inspiration.
Yeah. So you're saying that Georgia Tech's the rest of the schedule, the teams all just need to forfeit. Is that what you're saying?
If they know what's good for them, they should.
Man.
Yeah.
Mike Hickman, everybody.
Super fan.
Super GT fan. All right.
Go.
We will be back here next week on BuzzLine. We can't thank you enough for being with us, and Mike, for all that you've done with the West Lanier network of Georgia Tech fans and alumni. We've had many of those members come up here for the production of BuzzLine, and they were here in force for the Miami game.
Yeah.
And we hope they're back in force for the Clemson game, which is the next road game. Has that kickoff time? It's been announced.
8 o'clock on ABC.
Okay, and that's next weekend. But first up, it's the evening game against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. And with that, I'm John Rawls signing off from Buffalo's Cafe, coming alongside Mike Hickman and Jonathan Leifheit, GoJackets.com.
And go Jackets.
Go Jackets.
We'll see y'all next week.